Welcome back. This is another video where I'm going to be answering the most practical and important questions I'm asked by up-and-coming media composers. Ever since launching modernmediacomposer.com and this YouTube channel, I get a lot of emails with questions by some really fantastic musicians about working professionally in this career, and I honestly love the opportunity to answer them all. So in this video, it's going to be part of a new series I'm doing where I answer these emailed questions publicly so that everyone has a chance to learn from the information. This video is going to cover 4 really technical but great questions, and these are things that are really important to understand when working on professional media projects. So here they are. Question number 1, what does an industry scoring brief or cue sheet look like? How do you read and interpret or implement that? Question number 2 is, when given a scene to work on, are you given just that scene alone as a video file or the entire film or episode? Question number 3, when delivering final stems, are there any industry standard naming conventions to follow? Finally, question number 4, are there any best practices or tips when implementing revisions? These are fantastic questions, and I'm gonna say that this information is super important for anyone looking to work as a professional media composer. But it's especially important if you ever plan to work with a more established composer, because this is the kind of stuff you're going to be expected to know as an assistant or an additional music writer. So I'm really excited to talk about this in today's video. If you're new to this channel, I'm Jonas Friedman, and I've written music on lots of major network and studio projects for over a decade, and I also run modernmediacomposer.com, which you can check out for lots of free educational content, free virtual instruments, and we have a premium course for anyone looking to take things to the next level and go really deep into music production, scoring to picture, and producing music in different genres for professional projects. The last thing I'm going to say before we get started is, if you have any questions that you want answered on this channel, just leave them in the comments or use the contact form on our site to submit them, and I'll answer them the best I can. So now it's time to answer these incredibly thoughtful and practical questions from your fellow composers. Let's dive in. All right, first question. What does an industry scoring brief or cue sheet look like, and how do you read, interpret, or implement that? Is this even a thing, or do you just have meetings with directors or the head composer about what's needed? Great question, and yes, this is a thing. Most of the time, you'll get a scoring brief before you sign on officially to score a project. So if you have an agent or you're pitching with other composers, a music supervisor or someone from the studio is going to send out a brief that sort of outlines the project. It's going to talk about the style of the music that the creative team thinks they're looking for and what demos to submit for consideration. And I just want to do a little side note here that I did say what they think they're looking for, because a lot of times in this really early stage, they're still trying to kind of organize their thoughts, and the brief might change or what they're looking for might change as you go through that pitching process. But after you get the project, which hopefully you do, then you have the meetings with the director and the producers, and you don't really get a written brief from that point. It's your job to absorb what is discussed in the meetings, so there's not like a document that they provide you for each episode. You and your team, if you have one, or your music editor, are going to put together those notes and the documents from that spotting session, and you're going to reference those documents when you're scoring a scene or an entire film. So here's a couple of examples. I had to take out the series overview for confidentiality reasons because it's a very recognizable property, but it's just a couple of sentences, pretty much like the same description that you might read about on a project announcement from IMDb or in Variety or Hollywood Reporter. It's kind of like the same thing if you're flipping through Netflix or Amazon Prime and you're looking for a movie to watch. It'll give you a description of the movie. That's all that is. The instrumentation and the reference tracks, which you see below, those are really the important parts, because this is telling you creatively the music direction and wheelhouse that they want the music to be in. So as you can see here, it's pretty detailed, and they give you links to other pieces of music that they want you to reference for the score. So when I'm looking over this, what I find really helpful in this instrumentation section is right here. We are looking for a score that is superhero action adventure meets a contemporary version of classic rock heavy metal with indie pop influences. So then they go on to say, we need someone who is versatile and can play with a lot of fun in all types of genres. There will be many genre gags. We'd like to incorporate contemporary rock instruments, filtered electric guitars, bass, drums, cymbals, keyboards, and perhaps even electric organ and modern synths. The score will need to be seamlessly transitioning between these rock instruments and strings, brass, and percussion superhero action scoring. So right there, that's telling you everything you need to know about what this pitch is going to be. If we go down to the bottom, we see again, in addition to our everyday palette, we'll also need to play in a variety of other genres, including but not limited to classical, 80s pop, 80s hip-hop, 90s hip-hop, contemporary hip-hop, disco, rap, EDM, and Motown. So that's a little intimidating, but honestly, a pitch like this is the reason that I made Modern Media Composer and our course, Modern Scoring Mastery. As this brief demonstrates, it's not just about writing for the orchestra and strings, brass, or woodwinds. Today's music producers and composers, at least in my personal experience and opinion, need to be versatile and have just as much knowledge about music production and writing in these sort of more mainstream genres as they understand about writing for classical John Williams style scores. So it's not always that intense in terms of referencing different styles of music, but it's definitely far from the first time I've seen them reference the word modern and talk about incorporating electronics and synthesizers and production into the music score. It's just become really, really important. So that's just a little side note that you can discover from this real music brief here. The next thing this composer mentions in their question are cue sheets. I think given the context of the question, they're asking about a document like the one that I'm going to show you, which is a cue sheet and spotting notes sheet. So this document is from a show that I co-scored. If I go to the top of the sheet here, you'll notice that it shows the in and out times of the cues. It shows the title of the cue and the file format of the deliverable WAV files. And as we scroll down, you'll see that each cue is labeled like 1M01, 1M02, 1M03, 1M04, and then it continues as we go down here. If we go to the next page, 2M06, 3M07, and that just keeps going like that. Basically, if you're not familiar with this, it has to do with the breaks in the show. So the first number here has to do with the reel, okay? Which we don't really use reels anymore, everything's digital, but when we were dealing with film reels, and then the second number is the number of the cue in the project, with M standing for music. If you look at this example right here, this would say reel 3, cue, music cue 07. And that's how you interpret what that means. Basically, if you keep going down, you'll see that this particular episode had 18 music cues in the show, and it had 6 sections for those music cues. Right now, what happens when you have these sections is after a break. So for example, if it's an act out, that's going to then turn, as you can see here, it says act out to the end. After an act out, the next act is going to start with a new number. So if 5M15 is the last cue in Act 5, the next, once that comes back, is going to be 6M16. And that's how those cue sheets are sort of organized. Now, it's important to note, this is not what people refer to as an official cue sheet, which are what is delivered with the episode for documentation so that the composers and publishers receive royalties. This is a cue spotting sheet, and that is why you see these shared notes for each cue. So over here it says, Ted attempts to negotiate a deal for the company's server. And then there's other little notes and stuff. Those are notes from the spotting session. And those are just kind of things that either the other composer might have written in here to sort of keep the line of communication between everybody working on the project in sync. Or it can be a note that the director might have sent along with the episode, or the producer sent along with the episode. So those are the kind of notes that you're going to get if it's on a TV show, maybe episode to episode, or if it's on a film after a review session for a big chunk of cues, you might get little notes like that on what you're going to start approaching next. But as you can tell, these notes are far, far less in-depth and detailed than what we saw in the music brief before when we were pitching for a project. Let's go to the next question, which is, when given a scene to work on, are you given just that scene alone as a video file, or the whole film/episode? So this is a great question because it's not as cut and dry of an answer as many people would expect. Most of the time, you're going to get at some point an entire film or television episode, and that's what you're going to be working on. If you're lucky, the picture's going to be locked, meaning that there are no more changes that are going to happen in regards to the timing of the picture, although there can still be lots of visual effects changes and additions. The actual cut and edit of the episode or film is locked though, and that's what that's referring to. It means that there's not going to be any major scene changes like that. When I get an episode of a series, I get the entire episode. I pop it into my sequencer and I match the time code of my sequencer to the time code of the episode. However, Especially on larger projects, you can sometimes get a single scene or piece of a project to work on, especially if things are running behind and it's going to be a tight turnaround. A really perfect example of this is a show that I was working on, and they had this huge action opening to the entire series, but they didn't have it locked down yet. In this case, we got different scenes or segments to work on that were later in the episode, and then when the full episode was ready, we had to take the cues that were written to these one-off scenes and integrate them into the full episode. And that's a process called conforming, which is too big of a process to go into in this specific video. But if you're interested, just use the comment section below, let me know, and we can go into that in more detail in a future video somewhere. Another really great example of this is when I was pitching for a project and it was an animated project, and they had something called animatics done for 2 scenes. Now, if you haven't seen an animatic before, it's sort of like a pencil drawing blueprint. It's nothing like a final animation, but it does give you sort of like the main points, like maybe a character falls down, then they stand up. But again, it's all very, very rough. And this is just an example of when you might be doing a single scene rather than a whole 30-minute or hour-long episode and getting that to score instead. So with that said, when you do get an entire episode or film to put into your sequencer, which for me has been more common, you aren't doing the entire episode in one DAW session. Every cue is separately saved as its own session that gets exported, and then it's usually all the WAV files that are put together in a single Pro Tools session for final delivery. But it's not like you're writing 10 cues in a single Cubase or Logic session. That would usually be 10 different sessions, which is why it's so incredibly important to have a great template so that you can work efficiently between scenes. So moving on to the next question, number 3, when delivering final stems, are there industry standard naming conventions to follow? This is typically discussed with the other members of the creative team, such as editors or anyone that's going to be taking in the final files that you deliver. But with that said, there are some pretty common practices, such as including abbreviated codes for the project. So for example, when I was scoring the show Blue Bloods on CBS, the code was simply BB. Another example is a show like Walker Independence, where the code was WIN. And that's typically the first part of every file name, followed by the episode number. So if we were to use Walker Independence again as an example, that's going to be this. Let me show you over here. We're going to start with the show's code, which is WIN. And then we're going to say dash, and we're going to do the season and episode number. In this case, that's going to be 101. 1 stands for season 1, and then 01 stands for episode 1. Following that, we're going to do the cue name, which is in this case going to be 3M06. I'm just making this up for the example. But what that means here is 3 stands for Act 3, M stands for music cue, and it's 06. So we're saying that this is in Act 3, cue 06 of this episode, Season 1, Episode 1. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to put the name of this cue. So again, just making something up, I'm going to say Abby meets Tom. All right, so now again, just to review, this is Walker Independence. We know that because of the code. This is Season 1, Episode 01. This is Act 3, Q06, and the name of that cue is Abby meets Tom. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to label what the BPM of this cue is. So we're going to just put BPM, and if it's 98, you put 98. If it's 100, you put that. However, if this is a cue that changes tempos, let's say that it starts out at 98, but then something crazy happens and you break out into action, and all of a sudden you change the tempo to 140. In that case, you'll say 98-140, and it should be pretty obvious where that sort of change happens. Now, if it's a really big action scene and you're sort of changing the tempo a little more frequently to hit different picture cuts and stuff, which I do, what's going to happen is I'm just going to then write multi, because you're just not going to follow the tempo at that point, and you know that it has multi BPM changes throughout it. So the next thing that I'm going to do after I do that, we'll just put this back to 98, is we are going to put what this file is. Is it the stereo bus? Is it a, low string stem? Is it a brass stem? So you're going to label that here. If it was the final stereo bus, or the 2 mix as we call it, we're just going to put stereo. And then this tells you Walker Independence, Season 1, Episode 1, Act 3, Q6, Abby meets Tom. That's the name of the cue. It's 98 BPM, and this is the 2 mix that you might send off for review. However, if this was an actual stem, let's say that it's the low string stem. stem? Well, if you've seen my other video where I go over my template, you'll know that my low strings are my first stem in all of them, and that's labeled with an A. So I might say A dash low strings. So that's how you're going to label different stems. If this was the export for a brass stem, I might say my brass, I believe, is D dash brass. And that's how you're going to then identify those different things. So in my experience, this is the most common way that information is communicated in file names. Sometimes you might add the key of a piece of music, but that can get kind of tricky, especially for longer cues where you maybe have key changes due to the scenes changing. I will say that with the game that I'm working on right now, we put the key of the piece of music into the files because it's a little bit different when you have all these different pieces of music or stems from the entire game score that can be like kind of combined and everything like that. So having the bass line where the key is identified has been helpful with that. But in film and TV, I usually do not include the key of the piece of music because things change so commonly as scenes change. Let's now move on to our very last question here, which is number 4, are there any best practices or tips when implementing revisions? The answer is absolutely yes. The first thing I'll say here is to make sure that your revisions are noticeable. So often I've personally found, especially when a composer with less experience gets a revision note, they don't go far enough to make the change as obvious as it needs to be. Again, this is just my personal experience, but if someone gives a note that, oh, this needs to be darker, don't just add a little ambience or a single dark pad. Make it considerably darker so that there's a direct contrast between what it was and what the new version is. If you overshoot, that's okay because it's easy then to split the difference. But so many times I've actually given notes to someone who's helping me, or when I was starting out, I was given notes, and the person reviewing the cue says, I don't hear any difference. It sounds the same. So oftentimes, as composers, I find we work so incredibly closely to these cues that we notice any slight change, but it's not always noticeable to other people. Another really important thing to keep in mind when implementing revisions, and this is a big one, if you do a scene and have to do a rewrite, or if you're getting the sense that the director or the producer isn't really sure what they want, give them multiple versions to choose from. Some people will actually say that this is a waste of time. However, it's worked very well for me personally. I find that it's always good to over-deliver. So if someone were to say, this moment sounds a bit too whimsical, I want it to have a greater sense of drama or urgency or stakes, I would put another 2 versions on their desk, or do 2 new versions and I would just send one, but then I'll have another one in the barrel to send off instantly, either during a meeting or if they send an email saying that the revision isn't well received. Basically, this is my way of saying always be prepared and go the extra mile to fix something that doesn't seem like it's working as quickly as possible. The last thing I'm going to say about revisions is when you're asked to do them, don't worry. Every composer on the face of the earth has tons of revisions throughout their career. It does not mean that you did a bad job on the scene or that you scored it wrong necessarily. Sometimes the creative team just doesn't know what they want. Sometimes it's just a communication thing. Just know that it's very much part of the job, and so plan for them accordingly when you're making your schedule for a project. I just want to highlight again, these answers are all derived from my personal experience over the years. Other people may feel differently, and that's totally fine. It's a creative field, and so every project can be approached in a lot of different ways. However, if you found this information helpful, please let me know in the comments. The truth is, when you like a video, comment on a video, or subscribe, it's immensely helpful to the channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free videos for our community. If you're really interested in either working professionally as a music composer or just leveling up your music production and writing skills or scoring skills because you love music, you can check out modernmediacomposer.com to learn more about our pro course and our other free materials that we offer. Please let me know if there's any other questions that you have so I can answer them through future videos, and as always, I hope this was helpful.